So is Dan's camera working for you guys? Because I don't see him.
Yeah, I see Dan.
I see him.
Okay.
I'm wondering if let's see, if he's off screen. Do you only have room for like 4 images on the screen? Maybe that's why.
I mean, I can scroll over and see his black box, but
Oh, weird.
That is weird.
You might be better off than not saying me.
I looked in the attendee mode and I can see everybody in that mode,
Okay.
so we're good.
Cool.
Okay, going live.
We need some like music.
Yeah, I know. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us today for our webinar about controlling your DMO destiny. We've got a lot of fun speakers for you. So just maybe we could go around, introduce everyone. My name is Emily Harris, and I'm the Director of Marketing Operations here at Bandwango. And we're joined today by our CEO, Mo Parikh. Mo, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and cheers to a great 2021 ahead.
Absolutely. And also joined by our friend Brian Matson from TwoSix Digital. Thanks for chiming in today, Brian.
Oh, exciting. I've been looking forward to this one. I enjoy these kind of group Zoom conversations. Yeah, so I'm the Director of Education and Strategy at TwoSix Digital. So we're a digital marketing agency based out of Michigan.
Yeah, glad to have you. And we're also joined by 2 of our Bandwango clients, Jeff Robinson from Visit Indy. Thanks for jumping in today, Jeff. We're excited to hear about everything going on in Indy.
And he may have just froze. Oh, there he's back.
There he is back.
did you catch that? Sorry. Thank you for having me. Jeff Robinson, Senior Director of Marketing for Visit Indy. Big fan of Bandwango and happy to be a part of this conversation.
Happy to have you. And last but certainly not least, Daniel Molka from Heritage Corridor. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm the Marketing Manager of the Heritage Corridor CVB. We are basically the 6 counties southwest of Chicago, just to give you guys an idea where we are. And I've been using Bandwango now for a couple of years and plan on using it for many, many more.
Great. It's nice to have fans. We're going to kind of talk today about a few different things. The first being kind of how you can control first-party data, what the differences are between first-party data and third-party data. And we're going to have a bunch of fun kind of Q&A with our presenters and their thoughts on the pros, the cons, all the different ways that you can use data and they're using their data. So we'll just jump right in. Kind of the first questions I have are really about the basics. So, Brian, can you kind of explain to us what cookies are?
Well, there's there's 2 terms that get thrown around a lot, right? It's pixels and cookies, and they are kind of somewhat interchangeable, I think, to the normal person, but I guess to a marketer, they're slightly different. The cookie actually gets installed on the consumer's device, and the pixel is what's getting installed on your website to be able to facilitate that installation. And really, the whole thing all works together for us to be able to track and engage and communicate with people who are engaging with us. And, especially at TwoSix Digital, I mean, we have leaned heavily on, pixel data and to retarget engaged consumers, right? And now with these changes that are coming up here, well, we really don't know when the changes are going to come. It's just kind of a thing they're saying it's going to happen. It's going to change the way that we strategize and the way that we build our campaigns. So this is a big shift coming for us, which I think this is a really timely conversation to be talking about this own data, first party data kind of conversation today.
Yeah, that's great. And so you kind of mentioned it, but why is, what are these changes that are going to come about that are kind of mystery changes? Mo, I know that we've talked a lot about what's changing with iOS 14. Can you kind of share with the group what those changes might be and how that might impact cookie and pixel data from what we know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think privacy is really top of the mind right now in the digital age that we're currently at. Not only from the government level, but from the consumer level, people are getting more concerned with privacy and how and when their data is being shared and with whom it's being shared with. So I definitely see that a big shift is happening, and it's going to continue to happen. And so the question really then becomes, if a consumer is given the option to share their information with not only the brand or organization they're interacting with currently, but other brands and organizations, are they going to say yes or no? Me personally, I probably wouldn't necessarily want my data to be shared wide and far. Now, I do think there is a place for sharing data as it relates to personalization and providing value, but the real shift is happening right now, and especially with, for example, iOS 14 and Apple and cookies now being blocked more and more, the question really starts to arise is, what does the next generation of marketing look like when we were traditionally so reliant on data and pixels and tracking consumers through their digital journey? And the question becomes then, if we go back to sort of traditional business and the question of, if I'm going to provide you value, what am I going to get in exchange for that? I think, where I believe everything is really headed is brands really now needing more than ever to own this entire customer journey in the funnel and to really be able to capture that first party data in exchange for providing that value to the consumers and building that one-to-one communication channel and trust with those customers. So I definitely see the shift starting to happen. On my iOS device the other day, I noticed something that says, do you want to share your information? And there's huge implications with that, especially as it relates to advertising and programmatic ads and things like that. And Brian, this is your world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we were able to hop in on kind of a Facebook developer kind of a meeting probably a week or two ago where they addressed this thing. And like, this isn't some passive thing that they're saying. It's like, oh, people can go into their settings on an app and then set their privacy. Like, this literally takes up the entire screen on your phone, asking you in kind of a relating to iOS 14, like relating to be afraid. Do you want to share this information? Right? Like, it's right in your face on that. Even just some of the mock-ups that we saw of that were like, anybody who just is passively seeing that and that pops up on their screen, we're thinking it's going to be less than 20% of the people are actually going to opt in to that data. The concern or the challenge maybe that we have right now is trying to communicate to consumers why sharing that data is so valuable. Right. I just don't think most people have a clue about how customized the online experience is based on the data that they share with us. And if people don't understand that, the power and the influence of our networks, our advertising networks, is going to fall, because that user experience is going to go down and it's not going to be as useful for people's lives. But I think the number one thing that I saw was like how upfront it was, because in the past couple years, it's always been, hey, if you don't want this, go into your settings, click on the general tab, go down to privacy and blah, 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 and like change all this stuff. And it was this whole thing that we weren't even worried about it, to be quite honest, because it's like, nobody's ever going to do that. Only the hardest of hardcore people are going to go and restrict that privacy setting. But now, I mean, I think if I recall correctly, the button for opting out was even much larger than the opt-in button version on that. So yeah, we've got a couple challenges. It's education of the consumer, and then really protecting the health of these networks by producing and delivering good content to relevant audiences and making sure they see that value.
And Jeff and Dan, I'd love to sort of hear your perspective on this, because obviously when you as an organization and destination marketing really heavily focused on generating the awareness and the inspiration in that consumer journey, where do your sort of fears lie as it relates to this? What are you guys hearing from your agencies? And to add on to that, is there any notion and thought around, well, maybe fewer people are going to agree to share their data, but those are perhaps higher intent audiences? Because at the end of the day, it's about return on marketing investment overall. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing, what you're hearing from your partners.
I'll jump in. Yeah, we actually have been 100% digital in our marketing since 2014 at this point. So we rely extensively on that third-party data to be able to prospect effectively. And it's been all about like get the right message in front of the right person at the right time. And this is definitely going to present a challenge in doing that effectively. So, I mean, we're still in sort of a wait and see sort of mode right now, because obviously a lot of this is new. So we're still trying to educate ourselves by sitting in on sessions like this and hearing from experts and trying to understand the implications.
Yeah, a huge part of it too is that I think we've been a little spoiled here as marketers, especially over the last few years, to where we didn't have to manage data. All we had to do was, install a pixel and, let the machines do the work, and we'd be able to target all this stuff. So I do think we've gotten a little lax in our attention to maintaining our data sources, email lists, things like that, to where, in a way, we were talking about it internally at TwoSix, and it's like, man, it's kind of like we're going back to like 2012. To the prioritization of email marketing, cleaning our lists, things like that. I mean, I can say, personally, I mean, I've been totally spoiled by having the most powerful marketing tools, at a click of a button, to where I didn't have to be a data scientist or a data manager really in any way. It was all kind of done for us. So that's a huge, huge change. Just got to go back to fundamentals, if you will.
Right. And the other thing that's into play too is, how much is Facebook and all the other social medias, how much are they going to restrict organic? I mean, if we can't target with an email or get things of that nature, we're just, almost doing a kind of a spread out, and, hopefully we hit the right people with a paid Facebook ad.
Yeah, the one good thing that did come out of the meeting with Facebook, though, is that it did not sound like, and who knows what's going to change, but at this time, it did not sound like email custom audiences were going to be affected by that, because that is an owned first-party data source that we have. Where it's going to possibly have some serious ramifications are for our website pixeled audiences, app audiences, things like that. So that just makes it that much more dealing with the email list. The other downside that we're seeing about this is one of the most powerful aspects to our ad campaigns have always been being able to build the lookalike audience. So, we have a data source, but now we can go and find, 10 times more people who quote unquote should, want our experience or visit our destination. The lack or the decrease in all that data they're going to be able to collect, we're really unsure like what that means for the development and size and overall quality of some of the lookalike audiences. I don't think any of us can say that like 100% this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to impact these audience sizes. I think we got to run campaigns once the changes come out and start assessing at that point. But we were very pleased to hear that, okay, email is still going to be very, very relevant. We're going to be able to target against that. It's just that lookalike data. Because we used to be able to upload, 5,000 email contacts and then get an audience pool of 350,000 people that are just like those people on the list. It's kind of up in the air now to see if we're going to be able to generate that type of an audience moving forward.
Right. So that kind of brings us into a good, segue. Can you guys really explain, and Brian and Mo, maybe you can tag team this question, how first-party data is different from cookies and pixels? Because I know that we're talking a lot about these email lists and how it's more important than ever, but can we just kind of make a distinction for everybody in the audience? What is first-party data when we're, using that term, and how is it different from, these huge lookalike audiences or sources that we might have used in the past to kind of create more of a widespread impact with our marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the way I sort of like to describe it is the notion of targeting a silhouette, which is, you have the general shape of the quote unquote person versus actually being able to see somebody face to face and have a direct communication with them. I think that's really the key differentiator here is, the notion of pixel tracking traditionally has been capture information about a group or a subset of a group of people that match a certain set of criteria, whether that's based on demographic or interest-based targeting, whether it's based on events that occur on your website where they took a certain action. It's this sort of outline of somebody versus first-party data is you as an organization directly capturing a name, an email address, a phone number, a zip code directly from that person and them consenting to give it to you. And that's really, I think, is the big, point, I think, where everything's headed, in my opinion, is this notion of exchange of value. It's, hey, I'm going to give you something in exchange for some information. And now we're developing this trust. And we're developing this direct communication line where you do want to hear from me. And the interesting thing that we're seeing from a data perspective at Bandwango is in a lot of our passport and trail programs, we see 60 to 80% opt-ins on newsletters on these programs. So not only are these customers saying, yeah, I want to sign up for your ale trail, but they're going a step further and saying, yeah, I want to even hear more from your organization about craft beer in India and Heritage Corridor. And I think that is incredibly powerful because that, is the person versus the pixel now. And now you have a direct line of communication. And the other thing is we then are less reliant on third parties to communicate to our audiences. Right now we own the data and we can actually directly communicate to them, which is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, the key word you use there is that you own it. You have it. And I like the way you describe that. It's like a silhouette. Now I know it's Betty Johnson. Yep. I know it's this person, and I can actually build lists and things based on that. So I think the other side of the coin here is that like you can be like a data hoarder, and just like want to get all of these email addresses, but like that's a big commitment, honestly, for somebody to sign up for something. I think CVBs, especially, or anybody, they need to deliver on that promise. I mean, I do see that a lot of times, like our email communication, our regular monthly newsletters, like they're lacking value, they're lacking inspiration in a lot of cases. It's more of like a to-do list item for the front desk receptionist to get that monthly newsletter out, where maybe there's not enough communication going on with the marketing team about what content is resonating, what is actually going to work. I think it needs to move way beyond a to-do list item, because the value of that list only remains valuable if we are giving quality and actually giving something that people want. Because it's just as easy to sign up for an e-newsletter. It's just as easy to unsubscribe, when you put in a half effort, to communicate with this opt-in audience, I mean, they have a voice pretty quickly to say, well, that was a joke. I have a feeling I'll be writing a lot more email strategies here in the next year or two, because it is like this forgotten thing. Social really overshadowed the email e-newsletter platform in our industry in a lot of ways. And again, it's kind of back to fundamentals, but we got to deliver value on this stuff, because otherwise, what's the point?
Well, Jeff and Dan, question for you then, is in terms of this things to do, right, and checking the box, is some of it because this is what is promised in the value of membership of the stakeholders and how people perceive the activity? And then I see what you're both doing in your newsletters for both of your trails. And that stuff I see as incredibly valuable. Dan, I read it, when I see the emails come through, and Jeff, when your emails come through on the craft newsletters, there's real value in that stuff. I mean, you talk about real breweries and new beers on tap and events, and that type of stuff. I look at my personal email and what I subscribe to and unsubscribe to. I subscribe to the Hustle and the Daily Brew, and these are organizations that I get so much value from that I stick with it. And so, do you believe, in terms of what Brian's saying, that it has traditionally been this sort of like checkbox to do item, and do you think it's headed more in that direction of the niche audiences to drive very focused value to people that are interested in these specific things in your destinations?
I know on our end, it's we are a membership-based group, and we have roughly 300 members. And of course, the smaller member that doesn't have a story is the one who's always calling us saying, why aren't you doing a story? But we also have to balance that with the fact that, okay, what can I sandwich around it to, check off those boxes to make sure, A, our membership revenue is still coming in, because who knows with, heads and beds taxes through COVID now these days, we're kind of making sure that every member is happier than they've ever been. But we love you, members. But at the same time too, it's how do we get those email subscriber counts? How do we get all of our other metrics that they look at too to go up? I can't turn around and say, oh great, you guys have another special that's fried surf and turf, let's say. That's not going to bring somebody from states away to your place. So a little bit of education, a little bit of, yes, we still have to do what we have to do to bring in money, but it's a juggle.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I will say email has always been a top priority for us. Actually, yeah, we launched, this was, I want to say 6-7 years ago, an email called the Weekend 5. We kept seeing that events were the number one thing that people were coming to our website for. So we decided, okay, every Thursday morning, let's send them 5 events that they can go do this weekend. We built an entirely new audience with that, largely of locals, which I'm fine with because, again, VFR is the number one reason people are coming, and we want our locals experiencing our tourism ecosystem. So that's all good for us. And we've grown that audience in a really big way. And for our partners, they love when they see their event or their, whatever it is featured in that. So it's brought a lot of value on that side as well. And with the passes, I'll say when we launched the Craft Pass in October 2019, like the adoption was so quick. I mean, there was obviously like a major thirst, yes, pun intended, for this type of content. And it came about because I got challenged by one of our local partners who ran a brew bus tour and said, why aren't you guys doing anything specific around this industry that is growing so rapidly in our city? And a lot of it was we didn't really have a value proposition for those partners, right? They're small businesses trying to survive, trying to, pay their mortgage. And we couldn't really give them value outside of saying how many people looked at your listing or how many visitor guides we sent out or whatever. But we've seen a shift now to where, I can tell them, look, I sent 400 people through your door last year who asked for a code and checked in. Odds of them coming alone, slim, right? So that's probably multiple people coming in. How many people just bought one $5 beer? I'll bet not many. Most of them probably ate something, maybe had a few drinks. And you can put numbers to that and real economic impact on their business in a way that I just couldn't do before. So that first party data is so valuable, not only to us in terms of having a channel to that customer, but also showing value to our partners in a really big way.
Right. Yeah. And it's also like a massive, massive weapon that you have, or a tool, if you will, to re-engage. I mean, not only do you get to deliver the emails, but now we do have the options. Like I've seen some of the data that we can scrape from some of this. I mean, that is all about re-engagement. It's nurturing, return visit, working in overnight stays. It all works together in the whole thing. And the one that I've kind of harped on it in some of my sessions before too, about how a lot of DMO marketing lacks any sort of a sales funnel. It's a lot of one-touch inspiration. Like, yeah, if you like it, maybe you'll come to our website, and at the bottom of our website, you'll find that place where you can request a visitor guide, and then it's kind of off. And I think like having this first-party data, like I like Mo's way, like the silhouette idea, and then putting a face to it. I mean, that's like really motivating as a marketer to be able to re-engage by knowing the actions people have taken. So it's like, sure, you got the pass. But now, you hit 5 of the 20 spots. Now we re-engage and we hit them again. And maybe they only got to 5 on that first visit that they had, but now they're going to come back and they're going to hit those other 5. I mean, it's invaluable in that sense.
And it's more inspirational, than the random listing in a visitor guide.
Yeah. Well, it's attribution, right? I mean, end of the day, the golden nugget of digital marketing is attribution, because we all want to know the money we're spending, what's the result? And our stakeholders and the people that are funding us are asking that same question. And so I think owning that data is really the key. And I love, Brian, you bringing up this notion of remarketing, because it's not just about that first touch. It's not just about that first conversion. It's about what are we going to do now that we have this data to create long-lasting effects and ultimately make that dollar spent to get that first-party data go a really, really long way. Because I mean, again, return on marketing investment is the key to all of this stuff, and also understanding which channels and what methods we're employing, which are working and which are not working. There's that age-old mantra of somebody standing outside of a Walmart holding a sign for Coca-Cola, and somebody goes in to buy a Coca-Cola, and you attribute it to the sign. Well, we all know that's not necessarily true because I might have been going in there to get the Coke anyways. But that attribution, I think, is really the key here. And another point is really owning that entire customer journey. And the only way to do that is to digitally connect the dots and connect not only the top of the funnel efforts, but the bottom of the funnel conversion, which traditionally has been, especially in coupons and in printed books, it's been, let's go try to collect them from all the locations and manually count it and see what actually worked without really an understanding of how many ended up in the trash, right? Who were these people actually?
In the first year that I did my ale trail project, I did that. And I meant no.
But it validated the idea at least, right? I mean, it's a starting point.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time to kind of, we've got a poll to share with our audience who's here today. Does your organization currently have access to first-party data? So we're going to start that poll to see who in this webinar is also using their first-party data, has access to it. So feel free to engage with the poll. But in the meantime, I want to kind of get back to one of the earlier points that we were talking about, which is the difference between kind of third-party data and then first-party data, because buying third-party data was really popular a few years ago. And as we're kind of talking about this silhouette becoming more clear when we have access to first-party data, can you guys kind of talk about how the roles have shifted from how we used to use third-party data to now how more and more organizations are using the first-party data they do have access to?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think a lot of DMOs maybe lacked the tools to be able to generate leads, if you will, right? So it ended up being a lot of general large base types of things that maybe would come along with advertising and things like that. But that has completely changed at this point because we have a million ways now that well, not a million, but we got a lot of ways that we can generate leads. And high quality leads at that. I remember back in my CVB days, where I would get an Excel sheet from a vendor of 5,000 email addresses. But what would happen when I would upload that list is that my open rate on my next send would absolutely plummet. Right. So it's quality over quantity. And I think that's the big part that we're able to take control of now. I mean, as far as like building lists and things like that, I mean, Facebook lead ads are an amazing tool, and we are constantly blown away by how efficiently and how cost effectively we can build leads through a simple Facebook ad. Those work fantastically. But the one thing that I'm constantly amazed by is by simply adding like a landing mat or a pop-up sign-up form to a website or a mobile device. Those convert, and over time that can build to that owned database pretty heavily as well. You can run all kinds of other campaigns to do that, but I mean, if you've got Facebook lead ads and then you're driving traffic to your website and then you're intercepting with a landing mat in that way, you can build a list on your own now. You don't necessarily need it. Now, some of those lists could be valuable if that vendor was promoting something niche enough. Right, it has to be super specific. Everything is so specific now. There's really not a lot of room, and we honestly don't do a whole lot of like general marketing or like general awareness anymore. It's all very activity based, all the way down from people who like beer, which is a very broad niche, all the way down to people who like snowshoeing for some unknown reason, stuff like that. So. I just think there's so many new tools available to us to kind of take control of that whole process.
Well, I also think it's interesting, Brian, we look at what direct-to-consumer brands have done for years, which is heavily rely on the email database that they build. It's a massive source of their traffic, and that's in place because they are forced to own the entire customer journey, all the way from inspiration down to the actual purchase. And I think the challenges in the destination marketing world, especially for a long time, it has been focused more heavily on the top of the funnel, which isn't necessarily that conversion necessary focus. But now I think the tides are changing, especially with this transition from third party to really needing more first party data, but then also from the fact of providing better reporting to key stakeholders of return on marketing investment and economic impact, especially, really requires us to be able to measure those things more closely. And I think there's a lot we can all learn from what a lot of these brands do that are in e-commerce, that are responsible for driving traffic and sales. Because if we think of DMOs as businesses in some regard, where it's all around money in, economic impact out, it's going to force our hand to implement some of these tools to track this stuff, but then be able to really measure all of this economic impact in whatever way that it means. And I realize that in the destination marketing space, a sale isn't a traditional sale, right? It's measured in a variety of different ways. But I think putting those tools in place is really where everything is headed, and where a lot of organizations are now doing.
Yeah, I'll just say, a lot of us, in our marketing mix throughout the year, right? I mean, we have a lot of campaigns that are very inspiration focused, and I think, we still have to play in that space, but we do have a handful of efforts that are really directly designed at building our first party data. So whether that's, during those summer months when there used to be concerts, remember those live music things that they did outdoors? I mean, we had a very close relationship with Live Nation, and we would do giveaways all summer, and those were all contests designed to build our database so that we can have those people to market back to. And, in January, February, traditionally we do a top 25 restaurant survey. That's a big content play, but gets us a lot of data, first party data from people who are voting to submit their votes. We're actually shifting that this year. We're doing a March Madness style bracket competition with all of our restaurants, because Indianapolis is the host of the Final Four this year, just in case you guys weren't aware.
Woohoo.
And the entirety of March Madness, but we're going to be pitting top dishes against each other. And again, it's a big content play to get engagement on our website, but it's also all about building our databases up so we can remarket to those people throughout the year, because the value of that one-to-one communication is cannot be overstated. And you mentioned earlier about opt-ins. Of the 4,000 some people who have opted in or who have signed up for our Craft Pass, 68% of them have opted in to receive email and text from us, which is huge.
Which is, absolutely. It's a direct communication channel now. And it's also really interesting, you talk about the brackets for March Madness for restaurants. I draw that sort of parallel for lookalike audiences in Facebook land, where, give me people that, we know are interested in this, but now give me another set. It's so similar what you can then do with your first party data of, I have all these people now that have signed up for the March Madness bracket for food. What other similar niches would they be interested in? And maybe it's craft beer. Maybe it's, a tasting trail and other things. And that's really where it becomes really powerful of owning that data.
Right. And you can determine that through their action. So we're taking the assumption out of everything at this point. We referenced the cookies and clouds world. Every action you take is logged, and we're going to be able to do something with that. But in a way, it's even more powerful through email marketing and using email addresses, because you can send out that general e-newsletter. And I know a lot of people, I would say the majority of CVBs do a general e-newsletter that goes out there. But from that, you can whittle down all of the intent signals that people are giving about what they truly are interested in. Right. So it's really up to us as well to refine and clean those lists and segment those lists out. I'm super excited about smart email programs now, that keep track of every click that somebody made on that e-newsletter for the last year that they've been signed up, to then be able to create custom content to go to those people, to just, stop talking about the arts and crafts fair if they don't care about arts and crafts. If they care about beer, let's talk about beer. And that is the key, is sharpening the blade on those audiences. The other thing that I do think, and this kind of subtly came up earlier, was the battle we have with organic reach, right? So Facebook organic reach is really a struggle right now. When you take control of your data, when you take control of your messaging system, like through an e-newsletter or something like that, you're guaranteeing delivery. Okay, everybody sees that. It's not like MailChimp is coming out and saying, well, we're only going to deliver this to 20% of your audience. I mean, you've now taken control of that. And if you take the time to segment out or use a smart email program that can determine what content to send to people, it only gets better and better and better. So that $1 that you spent, or that $3 that you spent on generating a lead, right? that over time, if you're doing that, the value of that $3 invested to get that one lead, that you now maintain a year-long 100% reliable delivery system for content, that's significant. You know, the ROI on that $3 is crazy if you're taking the time to refine your messaging and use the data to kind of direct and give people what they want at the end of the day.
I think using that data is the key thing that you said right there. I can't tell you how many, I'll call out destinations, right? Because I've signed up for a lot of destination newsletters just to see what other people are doing. And when they ask for my interests and I give them to them, and then I never really receive anything that is tailored to those interests,
right?
It's a little maddening. So again, you have to be able to deliver, you better have a content machine behind all of that first party data.
Totally.
Prepared to deliver value to those customers, or you're wasting their time and your own.
Yeah, and your own. I think that's really key.
Yeah.
And those general newsletters too. I mean, all of our destinations have so many different things, whether it's, you know, craft beer, like Jeff and I kind of, our passes are geared toward wine. It could be food, it could be casino gambling, car racing. It could be sewing or skydiving.
Right.
You can't put all that in one newsletter continuously. Yep. And if you only feature certain things, somebody's going to get bored on the third time and hit unsubscribe.
Totally. And
I think.
Go ahead,
Brian.
Oh,
I think this is really just. Now we're just back and forth. I think this is really interesting because Jeff and Dan, both of you use the first party data that you captured through Bandwango to create those niche newsletters. And we talked a little bit about kind of the success of that, but can you maybe explain a little bit about how you transitioned and like what success you saw in terms of going from maybe more general newsletters to these super niche focused newsletters that are about the brew pass and do kind of re-engage people, to Brian's point earlier, just so everybody watching can understand the impact that's had for you guys.
Jeff, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, I'll jump in. Well, again, the evolution of email marketing, right? It began with, okay, here was, because I actually got hired, I remember back in 2006, right, to help them figure out how to manage their data or their email database. And so, they had all these emails that they had collected at festivals, and I don't know where they got them all, right? But it was a pretty junky list, right? But it was large. So we had this giant database of junk to start out with. And yeah, we started like everyone else doing the monthly newsletter forever. And we still do that, admittedly. But then again, as we started sharpening our sword in terms of email, it was first, okay, we started the Weekend 5 program, which was a new database really focused on events. And again, the open rates slowly started, they were way above what we were seeing on that monthly. So we might have been seeing like a 13-14% open rate on that monthly. Suddenly we were seeing 35% open rates, right, on this Weekend 5. So that was great. And then of course, with the Craft Pass, it was like, okay, we've got all these opt-ins. So we started doing a monthly that would go out to these people. It would showcase like how many places they've checked in at and how close they are to receiving their rewards, because you can get a t-shirt and a mug through our program. But we were also able to engage with our brewery and distillery partners, say, hey, are there any great features that you guys have right now that we need to focus on? So it was a great engagement with our partners. But we're seeing like a 42% average open rate on those Craft Pass emails. And we've also been able to utilize some text messaging as well. And we really only use that for like really timely news, maybe it's a new partner came on board, or there was like some breaking news that we want to share with people. But that engagement has been really strong. We even started doing meetups with those folks, which was really
awesome.
Cool. That was like our first foray into that. And so we'd work with a brewery partner and say, look, we're going to drive Craft Pass users into your brewery this night.
Wow.
Could you give us a couple of giveaways? And we did that once, and then COVID hit. Well, anyway, so we look forward to getting back into that someday. But to actually be able to mobilize our people was something totally new for us. So that was exciting as well.
Oh, that's huge. I love that.
Yeah, and our end too. I mean, we started ours purely selfishly to kiss up to a client or a potential member. We tried to figure out how to do this. And I mean, now they're a four-figure sponsor of ours. I mean, they're a key partner. And I mean, it was important to figure out what was that promotion to drive, and let alone too, I would say my breweries consist of 10% of my overall membership base now.
Wow.
One of those things was just from having a new member, we also saw too that brewery, people were clicking on breweries. Every time it hit that general, this is month 2 or month 3 into I'm like, hey, let's see what we can do and what we can run. And it took us about a year to get everything rocking and rolling. And now we're trying to build a brand. We compete against Chicago, so I mean, there's a lot of great craft beer there, but how can we pull people from Chicago or the rest of the country, if not world?
Yeah, like all this talk about partners, just I keep thinking in my head about these new opportunities that we have with data cooperatives as well. Because that your 20 craft breweries or whatever, they probably have their own email list of their super fans, of the people who love them. I mean, there are ways like in Facebook Ads Manager for sure, where you can create those audiences and share audiences among other ad accounts, right? So if your partners have been educated and they're executing their own ad campaigns through like Facebook Ads Manager, you could, in fact, just reach out to them and say, hey, we're running this craft beer promo. Why don't you share your list with us? Your audience, not your list, your audience. Again, this is almost silhouette data kind of at this point to be able to use that. But how cool is that to be able to use the lists from the partners to be able to energize your marketing? Because I do remember when I was working for a CVB, we had an amazing air museum. And I could promote the air museum. I could do interests of people who like air museums and all this stuff. But man, I always thought, and none of this stuff existed then, I always thought it'd be like, how cool if I could just like tap into their list, and those tools exist now. And I think that also just comes back around to education among the entire destination. Like the CVB can have all the skills to pay the bills, to do everything that we need to do. But my goodness, you can really ramp up your marketing efforts if everybody in that destination is utilizing the same tools. And if you can bring that together collectively into like a data co-op, that only makes this stuff even more valuable.
Do you envision, Brian, or Jeff and Dan, any pushback from your partners if you approach them with that idea of the notion of this is mine? It took me a while to build it. I'm not going to share it.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's an education thing saying, look, you're not giving me your list. I don't have the list of names. Okay. I have the audience. I have access to the audience that the content's going to be delivered to. Again, it's just kind of understanding how that whole process works. It's not like you're giving me your Excel list. I don't need that. You build it and then you share that, and I can use it as a component of my campaigns.
And sometimes too, you may have to educate your partner that, hey, I'm not marketing to your list of your people. We're doing it in a big giant collective. And there is a few people that it goes right over their head, but I mean, you just got to work with them and,
Totally.
try to convince.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole idea, right? Of as a community, we can rise the tide by working together and then joining forces. I mean, we see it happening all the time.
And the pandemic has been a wonderful tool for that in a weird way. Like it has really, like from my perspective of doing webinars for chambers and small business organizations and things like this, this has like forced innovation on a lot of people because the traditional channels just weren't there. So as a public speaker for all these years, I've always gotten frustrated. It's like, God, I wish people would just try or like move. I just kind of gave you the keys to the car, go drive. The pandemic actually really moved a lot of people forward, and I'm getting more and more and more interest from small businesses saying, if I want my business to survive, I need to be using the best marketing tools. It's time to start doing this. And again, we can leverage that as a destination on behalf of everybody.
Brian, I'll vouch for that, right? As much as I hate to say silver linings of a pandemic, but yeah, I've been wanting to do an attraction pass. I've been at the DMO for 15 years, right? And I could never get my attractions to play along. Right. And it took a pandemic for them to go, you know what? Maybe we could use a little extra help. And we're willing to offer wholesale rates for you to sell an attraction pass and get people in our doors because we're desperate. And it's something they should have done, a long time ago, but unfortunately it took times of, some rough times to bring them around and see the bigger picture. And I think DMOs throughout this pandemic, at least we have, I think, have shown our value in a lot of ways that our community partners have appreciated. And I think more and more of them are turning to us and going, okay, how are you marketing us out of this? And it's a good place to be, but it also comes with a level of pressure to make sure that we deliver for all of those businesses.
Right. And that kind of brings up a question that I always have, for both Dan and Jeff. I am always curious about, like, are your programs, was it chicken or egg? Did you think initially, okay, we've got a great craft brew scene and we need to get these kind of local partners on board? Or was it, we need some first party data and we think that this program could, capture people's attention to the point where they're willing to give us information, and any stakeholder or local business support that we get from it is kind of a bonus?
Well, I'll jump in first. Okay, so as I sort of said, I got challenged by a partner that we weren't really doing enough, and so when I looked at our partnership roster, we had 40 some breweries in the city, right? I mean, the scene was absolutely blowing up. But when I looked at who was a paying partner with us, we had 4, and I want to say 2 of those were like the big chain ones downtown, right? So we had all these great businesses that were not engaged with us and really saw no value in partnering with us. So this gave us a mechanism we now have 40 plus paying locations that are partners of ours who participate in this program, who we have a relationship with and can see our influence in a way that they couldn't before. And similarly, now we've got 4,000 plus people who we know are interested in this type of travel. And beer travel is a thing. Like, I'm definitely the guy who finds the brewery in every city that I visit, and sometimes we'll divert a trip. I was coming back from Charleston, and I had to swing through Asheville to see the big Sierra Nevada brewery that they built there, right? And I'm that guy who does that. And there's a lot of people like me. So I think this gave us inroads to those people to try to inspire travel to our city and spend time and return visit to complete their craft pass challenge. And we have if you check in at 35 locations, you earn a mug, and I want to say we've had like 30 people do that, which during a pandemic, 40. Which is crazy.
And I would say on my end too, I mean, we were trying to figure out a promotion around craft beer, but I used that first party data as one of my bullet points when I kind of approached my boss and pitched it. That, hey, we're doing this, but we're also doing these 14 other things. We're getting this data. We're gonna be able to create something and stand out, because I mean, there's so many CVBs in our area. It's a little bit of a competition too, and I think a few of them now are actually working with Bandwango as well. But we wanted to make sure that we were first, kind of market leader, for lack of a better way to say it, and try to get our brand out there quicker than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, data cooperative, just to go back one step, I mean, that applies to CVBs and regions too.
Yeah. Yep.
It really does.
Yeah. And I think it's all this idea that, we've talked about side benefits of the pandemic, as weird as it may seem, but I feel like, put a spotlight on like how we can nurture smaller groups of people in our locals and just in our social channels. Brian, can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what you've seen from your end in terms of how the pandemic has had a weird side effect of these kind of niche audiences becoming better sounding boards?
Well, I mean, one thing I can say is that I think that these passion-based audiences, the more niche that we go, the more motivated they are to communicate and build community. And in that community, they're actually creating more content. And if we're paying attention, that content can help us tell better stories. So, I mean, if you have this base of like highly motivated people and you provide them with opportunities to share their stories and communicate and share Instagrams, and you develop the hashtag strategy or whatever it is, I mean, that's another added benefit of that. I mean, just having a highly engaged audience is a huge thing. I mean, the pandemic has had all sorts of interesting kind of nuances to it. I mean, the biggest one for me, though, is, I started out in the industry in 2003. And I distinctly remember being told this at conferences. It's like, we're the CVB, our marketing starts 100 miles out. Like, that's where I started. Like, we don't touch anything local. All right. And that in turn kind of translated to this thing is that nobody saw the value of what the CVB even did. We were out of sight, out of mind. So in the sense, I feel like the pandemic, again, in a happy, terrible accident of whatever it is, it has turned our focus to our locals, and allowing them to be ambassadors for our destination and the different experiences that are there. And I feel like CVBs are okay with it. And maybe one of the reasons they're okay with it is because during the last 10 months, they had no choice. Right. So in a way, that all turned in, it all just kind of flips the whole script for everything that we're doing here. But again, in everything, it all comes down to, like, it's almost like a passion score. Like, you got rock climbers, you've got people who love wine, craft beer, whatever it is. People are into something, they're into something, and they talk about that. So the more specific we can be about that, we're just enabling people to tell stories about things they love, which then translates. We're encouraging people to share reviews about the experiences they had. And then we as DMOs can capitalize on that too, because now we can go and use those reviews to say, you know what, Andy had an awesome time here last week doing the Brood Tour. Get your passport, do it next week. Read his reviews, see his photos, all of that. I think it's been like a huge exercise in, like, enabling, if that makes sense.
And on the member side of things, when we're approaching our businesses, the member truly doesn't care where somebody comes from as long as they come through their door.
Totally.
But if at the same time you can say, hey, the Heritage Corridor CVB got that person through the door, that's a check mark for us.
And I will say that the shift to local was happening already.
Yeah.
The pandemic, like, turbo drive, really forced us to go all in. But I think harnessing our locals, especially if you're not a vacation destination, which, look, I know what we are, right? We are not a place that people are carving out a week to come and vacation with their family, but they are going to spend a long weekend. And a lot of people are coming in to visit their friends and relatives. And what we want is those friends and relatives to take them out to see the stuff that they know about. And if we're not communicating to them, they're probably going to stay in their suburban home and do whatever, right? So it's imperative that locals know what's happening, how to do it, where the cool stuff's at, so that they show those visitors a great time, and maybe those people will come back.
Yeah, dude, that is such a great point, because the last thing you want is your locals and their relatives to come and be like, "What do you want to do tonight?" No, there's nothing to do. Let's barbecue or something like that. Man, extremely valid point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a place where a lot of our destinations who come to Bandwango, they're coming from, is we're talking to our hotels and they're saying, their front desk agents don't know what is to do in town. Visit Houston's Experience Marketplace, which is a Bandwango product, was basically started from that, very problem. And now, I think ignoring Bandwango as a tool for first-party data and kind of wrapping this conversation up, obviously, Bandwango can give you an immense amount of data. But Brian, can you talk a little bit about kind of how first-party data can be gathered other than using, a platform like Bandwango? Give people maybe an idea or two of how it might work in their destination.
Well, I think the one that's most overlooked and the easiest one that people could do is to integrate it into your content plan. All right. So on all your multi-channel, whether it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's Twitter, it's Pinterest, it's TikTok, it's wherever you are, integrate that call to action into your content planning, whether or not, it's once a month or a couple times a month or whatever. But I think people just are really silent about it and they don't tell people about the opportunity. So the other thing is, in most of our websites, it's the last thing on the page. And if you look at scroll depth data, nobody's getting to the bottom of your page for your sign up form. So that's a huge problem. So you got to tell people about it in that sense first. Sweepstakes, offerings, deals, discounts, packages, coupon books, things like that, they actually work. I have a couple clients who put together an annual coupon book, right? And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. At least it's a value add, right? It's something that we can convert on and measure, but that's what they want. And when we do surveys of email audiences and we're doing an email strategy, something like that, the number one response that comes back is, what do you want from us? And what the consumer wants are deals, discounts, packages, and itineraries. And sadly, we never deliver on those, right? So I think offering that is a great way to get the data, okay? To offer something like that that's unique. The landing mats, the pop-up form, they do convert. That's an easy thing to add to your site, okay? So people are on a particular page. The other thing is just like segment that out. If people are on your outdoor recreation pages on your website, don't send them a sign-up link for the general e-newsletter. Like, you've already got them. They've already given you an intent signal. Follow that and start building your list smart in that sense. And then, honestly, lead gen ads on Facebook are a wonderful way to do it. And there's lead gen ads. You can do like cards on Twitter. I think there's even Pinterest lead ads that you can do. They work. I mean, I think just like spitballing a little bit, I think like our leads on an email lead ad, specific lead ad on Facebook range between 75 cents and $3. Right. So if we're looking at the value that one contact has for the long term, it's such a smart investment. Like for 2021, for sure, lead gen is I'd say it's probably number one conversion point on anything we're running right now, because we recognize that owned data, first party data is so important. And we also just realize that our ability to be able to segment that through content themes is extremely versatile. So we're not just saying sign up for our newsletter, get our general visitor guide. It's like, no, sign up for the outdoor rec pass, sign up for this. And Bandwango, I mean, you guys like timed the market perfectly with your product. I mean, just honestly, this is something that plugs into everyone. I think you just have to give people opportunities, right? And then it's a matter of if those people are motivated and passionate enough, and back to that certain point, if you have been providing value and you are useful, and people see you as an authority, and you're not just paying lip service to all these different segments for the sake of having a segmented list, I think you're going to be able to convert more and more and more. The last one is encourage people and ask people to share. It's not a dirty thing to ask people to share. We talk all the time in our content marketing classes and our content planning. It's like directional language, right? Tell people what you want to do is the main thing, and give people an action to take. Like, that's what you have to do. And if you can just do that, your conversion rate automatically increases just by telling people. It's like, sign up, hey, share this. There was one deal that I saw a while back too, where it was like invite a friend, stuff like that. It's like, is this a tour that you would like your long lost friend from high school to come and join you to do? Like, whatever it is, give people avenues to do that. But at the end of the day, you got to be really good at telling your story and being authentic and all that. But I always fall back on, if you're useful, people will sign up. Like, you just have to be useful. Like, I've signed up to a ton of email lists that have a garbage website that, it's not mobilely optimized, but I can go to that website and I get the answer to my question. And the information I need is there. I can tolerate a lot when it comes to like user experience, as long as you're being useful.
Well, I think that's the key word, Brian, useful. And it goes back to this exchange of value, right? You are looking for something from them and they're looking at something from you. And so I'd encourage everyone to sort of ask, why would somebody give me their information? And would I give myself that information? And it drives back to what's the value you're providing to them. And then to a point Jeff made earlier, it's not only the initial interaction and exchange of, money, let's call it. It's also, what's the long-term engagement strategy there? Because Brian, if you're spending 75 cents to $3 to get a lead, that's not a lot of money for one time, but it's a lot of money for thousands and thousands of times. So the question then becomes, what's that long tail effect to use that stuff? And again, it just goes back to that notion of, would I sign up for this? Would I give this organization my information? And really what the value is that you're providing to them. Because also remember, in this day and age, content is everywhere. You can find the same information that you can find on a DMO website and 50 other spots. However, in my opinion, the big differentiator is DMOs are the locals that live there. DMOs have the relationships with these local businesses. DMOs know this area better than anybody possibly can. And there's a place for the TripAdvisor of the world to have all this content. But but being that fabric that stitches the community together puts a DMO in a really, really unique position to provide really, unique value to these different customers.
And the one thing too that, knock on wood, we'll eventually get back to is when we're all working our events and, actually talking to people and things of that nature. And I mean, if you want to, segment your list, you can have like questions on the bottom, like choose your actual topic. So this is a horrible kind of thing to show. But I mean, we got to start thinking about that too, because, we're eventually going to be out sitting in tables waiting as people walk by, along with 9,000 other people at different events and other, trade shows and things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this has been a super interesting conversation. I hope all of our attendees got something out of it. I want to let everyone know this recording is going to be published on bandwango.com. So if you want to point your friends in the right direction, that's where they should go. Hopefully you guys have opted into the TwoSix newsletter and the Bandwango newsletter. And I encourage everybody to follow Visit Indy and Heritage Corridor. They're great examples of Bandwango clients really, excelling using that first party data perfectly. So thank you again to our presenters for joining us. I really have enjoyed our time here, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.